Hi, I'm Terry Bozzio. Welcome to Drum Channel, and I am honored to have my guest here today, a guy who I have played with, and you've probably heard play with Shakira, and a lot of other stuff, though, that goes deeper and in other directions, and we're going to get into that today. I present to you Mr. Brendan Buckley.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, I just watched your lesson with Don, and I was fascinated. It was... well, first of all, there's a sensitivity about you that I really love. And there's, an intellectual, prowess, I guess you'd say. And I feel like you know what you're talking about, and I resonate with so much of what you're talking about. And, we have one guy in common, which is Efrain Toro. But I learned so much about you in this lesson with Don about how you went to the University of Miami and you had some really good teachers, and you actually were able to get a minor, I guess, in teaching on, in public school level. And that takes a lot of work. You have to learn other instruments, at least to make a sound on them,
That's true.
And stuff like that. And then, you're most known for your work with Shakira, I guess.
Yeah.
But you've had a lot of other experiences that I thought were pretty interesting, especially with the Latin community in Miami and all the different aspects of Latin music. They're not just Afro-Cuban and Brazilian, but also Colombia, and every little country down there has their own thing and their own sort of set of rules and feels and things like this. So at any rate, your playing reminds me a little bit, and this is just in a vague sort of way, because Chad Wackerman is so sensitive, and the way he hits the drums, you had a little bit of this. Didn't you feel this, Don? Like a little bit of the Wackerman family expression in your playing. And I know they studied with Murray Spivak and have a very special technique, but there was something about the way you moved and expressed yourself that just shows this sensitivity, which I've played with Chad so much, and I love the guy because he's that way. He really listens and is a very sensitive and astute companion to be able to play with. There's a it's a love thing, I guess, but it's also, there are these particular things about him, He listens, he goes with, and is, you can tell he's there for you, He can make you sound right when you're wrong, and, stuff like that. And I get
Safety net.
Yeah, I get that from you, I get this this feeling of sensitivity, and I think it's really important as a drummer to have that, so.
Well, thank you. I would say that one of your goals as a drummer, we should all have this goal to try to be who we are, try to find out who you are at some point, maybe not when you're 18, but maybe by the time you're 30, you should start figuring out who you are as a person, personality-wise, sensibility-wise, and explore that. Don't run away from it, If there are drummers who are super alpha, like aggro alpha people who are very testosterone and like, let's do this, follow me, it's my way or the highway kind of drummers. And they are great at what they do. They exist for a certain reason. And then there's people who are the exact opposite, who are complete followers, who just blend in and you never notice them, and everything in between. It's not black or white, it's a gray area. And I think we all figure out who we are and what we're good at and what people like about us.
Yeah.
And then you kind of expand on that. And I think I'm very team-oriented. I like making the people around me very comfortable in a musical setting or otherwise. And I've searched out ways to do that musically, to make every band or artist with whom I'm working feel really comfortable and very capable of doing what they want to do at a high level. And these are hard things to put into words. You just learn it over time through trial and error. Like this worked, that didn't work, this worked, that didn't work. And you make a little checklist of things that really work well and things that kind of didn't work that well. And I think that's part of where my sound and style came from. I loved Chad, actually, a while back. The first record I ever heard him on was actually an Andy Summers album.
Oh, yeah.
From, Guitars for the Police. I heard him playing, and I loved his drumming. And then I went back and found out that he played on that Zappa live record, Best Band You've Never Heard Of? Or is that how you pronounce that? You word that?
Chad's actually the longest drummer stayed with him the longest amount of time.
I love the live double album. Oh my God. And and I've got to see him play live a few times, and I've met him a few times. I found him to be just the nicest. And I think part of I also, when I see myself play, I realize now that I robbed a lot from Omar Hakim. I used to love his drumming.
Oh,
I still
who
do.
doesn't? Yeah,
still
he's
do.
fantastic.
And not only do I loved his drumming, but I loved his career. I loved when he came out on Dream of the Blue Turtles, and I'm like, is this the same guy who's in Weather Report, and Miles Davis, and David Bowie? How is this possible? And I remember he came out with a couple when they used to have those VHS, I think DCI instructional tapes. I got one of his, and I just loved the way he sat. I loved the way his elbows moved. I loved the way he flowed. And I thought to myself, I want to have that type of relaxed playing style, where I breathe and I'm not stiff, I'm not tensing, I'm not hitting hard. So I didn't think about it at the time, but much later did I realize I probably absorbed a lot of that without even noticing. How much I loved the way he approached playing the drum set,
Yeah. I liked a lot of the alpha guys, There were guys, like Eric Gravad is one of my favorite drummers, and he was the second drummer after Alphonse Mouzon was the original. He came in, and I think it's on I Sing the Body Electric, which is just, to me, one of the epitomes of jazz moving into like filmic, ambient, impressionistic, all these influences, and electronic, it just had everything. And Eric was so special, and I got to see him live a couple of nights in a row at Keystone Corners in San Francisco. And the first night, Damu Ramau could not make the gig due to customs or something, so they hired a local percussionist, Kenneth Nash, who I got to play with several times. And he's one of my favorite percussionists. And I think he teaches at Berkeley over there, up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it was just so beautiful. And then the next night, Damu came in, and it was like, I felt like Wayne couldn't get a word in edgewise, because it was just a percussion fest of the three drummers, and it got really primitive and really out and really beautiful. It wasn't like, it was like they were supposed to go, here's your space, take it,
Yeah.
And I mean, not like in a Billy Cobham way, I could never go there, but with Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, other drummers who just seemed to have this masterful flow and be an equal part of the conversation of musical events that were happening. I mean, like you said, there's guys who just are completely subdominant and support through the whole gig, and there is an art to finding where your place is any type of music you play. Like you said, Omar, playing with Weather Report and then playing with Sting, how did he do that? Well, he listens, man, and he does the right thing at the right time,
There was the live Miles record with Tony, the Four and More, My Funny Valentine album.
Yeah, sure.
Where it just sounds, I mean, there's no way, I mean, he is absolutely playing within the concept of a jazz quintet, but he is also saying, I am here, hear me now,
yes.
Bum, 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 bum. And I feel like Ron's holding on, Herbie's right there, but he's definitely pushing it.
Yeah.
Like he's not holding back
and
at
that
all.
was almost a part of his musical expression, right? There'd be a tempo, fast, right?
Yeah.
And through the head, and then as soon as the solo would start, it was like the tempo jumped like 3 or 4, beats per minute or something. And it just created this excitement. I know Miles loved it because you can hear the way he's playing over that. And
And then on that album, how he would just randomly, well, maybe not randomly, just consciously drop out for whole. They're just cooking. He's out.
Yeah.
And Ron Carter's just like going like,
Yeah.
it just like sneaks back in again. It's not like they just build to the end of the song. He builds, he's out.
Yeah.
And then he'll sneak back in again, he's out.
I could talk about Tony for hours.
Exactly.
You know, when you think of Feed to Kilimanjaro, there's some really melodic drumming on some of those tracks. And it's just a beautiful thing, you know, to hear. I felt too, you know, Ron, they always called Ron the anchor of the group. And I understand what they mean because he was, you know, such a great timekeeper. But he really was more like the keel, you know? He guided the ship, you know? It wasn't like an anchor, like we're going nowhere.
Yeah.
You know? We're moored at a harbor. It was like, let's go and let's keep it straight, you know? Unless you want to turn the rudder, you know?
Yeah.
So, and some of his solo work and, you know, all of that. I've been watching a lot of Ron Carter's little things that are on YouTube, and there's some roundtable discussions that are just wonderful. And, you know, they had literally no rehearsal for anything. They'd show up at the studio at a certain time, and the tape would be running while they were unpacking their instruments, you know? And they never knew what they were going to play, and they had had it in front of them, and they just started playing. So just phenomenal, you know, because there's not that much of that being done anymore, you know.
Oh yeah, and the term anchor, when it comes to improvisatory music, I get exactly what you mean, because imagine if you put 4 guys on stage and you say, everyone just play whatever you want. Time, feel, stretching, that's cool, but if there's no frame of reference, you don't know where you're departing from and coming back to, right? It's almost like you need some type of structure. Even in free jazz, there was some type of structure that they would depart and then come back to. You know, okay, you're going to be the guy playing time and we're going to play around you. Or you're going to be the guy dictating harmony and we're going to play around it. And it doesn't always have to be the drummer who keeps time, you know, in that case. You know, it was Ron who's keeping the time and allowed Tony to explore polyrhythms and dynamics. And I feel like that's an important thing, even when you're talking more about pocket music. Like some guys will be talking about, should we all lay back on this song? Like, well, we can't all lay back on this song because then the song will drag. Someone can lay back, the bassist can lay back if everyone else is kind of keeping a nice, solid pulse.
Yeah.
But if everyone's like, this is kind of a laid back song, then it just starts to go down like BPMs, you know? Or the same thing, let's be on top. Well, some people can be on top. Maybe the drummer can be on top, but someone has to keep it kind of in the middle so it feels like it has some tension. Or else the music's just going like this all the time.
Well, for me too, you know, it depends on the personalities, right? And the intention. Always there's, you know, what is your intention? And anything could be okay, you know, any one of those things you mentioned. For me, one of the best experiences I ever had was with Alan Holdsworth, Pat Mastelotto, and Tony Levin and myself. And I said, you know, I want you guys to just do whatever you do. I love what you do so much. I would never dream of telling you what to do, but let's just think compositionally and you know, if something's staying on a groove or something too long, let's change. Everybody listen and go with or go against, or, you know, take it, Tony, or take it, you know, Alan, or I'll take it and you know, do my thing and you guys follow me for a second. Just any of those things. If you make a list of all the possibilities of contrasts, you know, fast, slow, and loud or soft, and you just say, this is an unconditional acceptance of the other musicians and their ideas at any moment, you know. I could be thinking, oh, I'm going to do this, and then somebody does something and I go, oh, that won't work, you know, I can't do that. So I'm going to go with, you know, what Pat is setting up or something. So, you know, these things, if you have, once again, we were talking about concepts earlier. If you identify a concept, like that as a concept, we're going to make a one-time, authentic, you know, event, never to be repeated. Then those things are okay, you know, and you can apply these concepts in many different ways, you know, and it'll never be the same. Always be whatever, searching, exploring, and improvising in the moment. And, you know, the audience should be very grateful to be able to hear something like that. So, you know, it can be that, and it can be all the things that you mentioned as well. You know, just what's your intention? What is the situation? That's probably the only time I've ever been able to do that. There's been, you know, restrictions or constrictions for good reason in other situations I've played in groups, and that's okay too. You know, just whatever you want to do. And for me, I'm one of the guys who likes to identify and, you know, like we were talking earlier and in your lesson about having all the permutations memorized, right? And let's call those letters, and then, you know, make up words and then tell a story with music, you know? And that to me is fun. That to me is the magic and the love and the humanity of music, you know, as well as art and science. So.
Yeah, and that way of learning conceptually, but in fragments and building, is my favorite way to learn now. I like basically either hearing something, checking out a record, or seeing someone and saying, there's something going on there that I don't get or I don't do. Or hearing something about myself that I'm like, there's someplace I want to go, or something I want to be able to do that I can't do yet. And then I dissect it. And I dissect it into like, where do we start? Is it an independence thing? Is it a vocabulary thing? Is it a chops thing? And then I just break it down into little things and then build on it until that becomes part of my vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I find it, so basically, I say this to students and other people a lot, is that, you know, when they ask, what do you practice? I'm like, I search for things I can't do.
Yeah.
And when I find one, I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
I suck at this, and now I have something to work on. Or
Yeah.
I can't do that, or this drummer's really good at this, and I don't know how he's getting that, so I want to get that too. And it's inspiring for me, even at this age, where I find something, I'm like, I'm going to work on this for the next month or 8 months or whatever.
Yeah. Well, for me, I got the little Harvard Dictionary of Music and would be reading it on the plane, you know, and you know, you look up one term and you understand that, you know, 'cause there's the definition, and then it says see also, and you know, you start following, like simple things, just like the idea of sound. You know, the idea of monophony, you know, like one voice singing, you know. We have how many different types of instruments on a drum set, you know? Do we ever just play one cymbal, you know, or just play the toms and have that, you know, monophony aspect to a drum solo or composition or something, or even accompanying someone else in an ensemble? And then there's the antiphony, you know, sound against sound, from Middle Ages, where a priest would sing something in the you know, at the altar, and then the choir would answer him, and never would they sing together. You know, that was against church rules, but it's also a concept, right? So here's maybe play a phrase on your toms, answer it on your cymbals or what have you, and then polyphony, which is many voices, you know. And there was this guy, I think Thomas Tallis, who made polyphonic madrigals in the, you know, early days of England. I can't remember exactly the time, but I think it was in the Middle Ages sometime, where he would have like maybe 50 voices all happening. And if you ever hear this music, you know, it's just like, what the heck is going on here? And it all works, you know, but there's just so much, and it's very complex to hear. So, you know, things like that I get fascinated about, you know, and I go, okay, how can I apply this to the drums, you know? And okay, well, I've got two hands and I can roll on different toms, and so maybe I can imply two different voices while rolling, you know? And that creates this polyphonic kind of a sound.
Yeah, and in orchestration, you learn about like where they do doubling of different melody notes. So if you're listening to a classical music piece, you'll hear it right away on the radio where, oh, the flute is playing and also the xylophone's playing.
Yeah.
It's like the xylophone and flute are playing the same melody. Okay, now I hear a trumpet and a marimba, or now I hear the trombones and the violas are playing a line. So orchestrators it's not just one guy playing the melody, they'll pick 2 or 3 instruments with different timbres, and they'll write it that way. And then I like doing that on the drum set as opposed to just thinking, boom, bsh, boom, boom, bsh, whatever we do on the drums, which is great, it always works, but it's like, how can I couple different sounds on the instrument that are a little odd at first, but then all of a sudden sound really cool?
Yeah.
So I'll switch my hands and do this together, or do this together and do this until I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That doesn't sound good. That doesn't speak well. This sounds cool, and this, and it's kind of fun for me to take the same rhythm or same syncopation and try different ways of just selecting it around the kit. Yeah. I call them sound sources. Just different sound sources until I'm like, ooh, that's a little odd. I've never done it that way before, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I always tell kids, make an orchestrational chart of your drum set by just, kick, snare, toms, hat, cymbals, right? Mm-hmm. And then right across the page, kick, snare, hat, toms, cymbals. Draw some lines, and in the places where they meet, do I play my kick drum with my snare drum? Mm-hmm. And those are 2 dominant sounds that we rarely play together, as an orchestrational choice. That texture, and it's very powerful.
I love that sound,
but yeah, that's how you, and if you have an extra snare, so you can add that. Other guys have bongos or what have you, and whatever they have on their kit, just add those things into their little chart and look at the possibilities. And there they are, right on one page. And then, you can explore things that you haven't looked at, or, what's the word? I guess it has to do with acceptance, but I can't think of the right word that I want to use. But, I can't say it. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't say it. So, the things that you use all the time, just, what's the word? Acknowledge. That's the word I wanted. You can acknowledge the things that you use all the time, know?
I might have told this story in one of our other visits here, but I remember once I was watching a Steve Gadd performance, and he was playing with a Latin rhythm section. I can't remember the name of the conguero he plays with, Pedro Martinez or this New York group he plays with. And there was a bongo player, so it was like congas, Steve Gadd, bongo player, one other percussionist too. And I remember it was just groovy and funky the way it always is when he plays, and laid back, and everything sounds great. And then they broke it down, and then this bongo player just had it between his knees, and he just took a solo. And it could have been 5 minutes, it could have been 15 minutes. All I know is I was like,
yeah.
Because after hearing all this amazing music, this guy just had this tiny drum and a slightly bigger drum, and told endless stories with just these 2 drums.
Yeah.
Just like, and I was at the edge of my seat, entertained as though I was watching like a 3-hour documentary. I was like, and it fired off all these thoughts in my head that I sit behind a drum set and I never think like that.
Yeah.
I never think, all I need is 2 pitches, a high pitch and a low pitch, and I need to take those 2 pitches and tell a story.
Yeah.
And just see how many ways I can move time, syncopation, melody, back and forth between 2 pitches. And they could be any 2 pitches.
Yeah.
And I started looking at the drum set kind of like you were talking about with a diagram. Like, have I ever done small snare and main snare? Have I ever done main snare, floor tom? Have I ever done hi-hat and ride cymbal? And I would just take 2 pitches and I would solo between 2 pitches.
Yeah.
And I found that so much more entertaining and enjoyable than going around my whole kit.
Yeah.
I felt like a kid again, and it basically ignited this whole new way of practicing for me.
Yeah.
I loved it.
What you're talking about, too, has to do with the law of compensation in music. First of all, I think Latin percussion instruments have a much more melodic and toneful, as opposed to sort of a non-specific pitch or a thump or a tack or what have you, than the Western drum set. congas are all tuned different, and there is this beautiful melodic thing just inherent, in the instrument. But that's what I do when, I play a lot of melodies, right? So melodies, the compensation is it's not as complex rhythmically, right? Because you're playing melody. So, like say a complicated melodic pattern like that goes up like in a scale form is still just very boring rhythmically. So when I play rhythmically, for contrast, I try and just stay on one or two instruments and then think syncopation and note and rest information to put the focus on something rhythmic. And I think one of the things about rhythm is you want to create tension and release, right? So there's things that you want to do that will cause this tension. So if you're in 4, if you play in groups of 3 on the 4, then you're creating a polyrhythm, and it creates a tension because it takes your focus away from the underlying pulse. And then when you release and come back in on 1, there's this release and resolution. So, that rhythmic aspect, as opposed to melody and harmony, right, which are at a totally different level. So if you think of Indian music, right, say the two things really present there are incredible melodies and very complex rhythms, right? So harmonically, we have just a drone underneath to compensate for that, right? Because if the bass or was playing crazy changes like Bill Evans or something, then it wouldn't work as a music. People who have tried to serialize this made lousy music, and you don't hear about them in the history of music. But if you think the opposite way, say like Debussy, a sparse melody, and then just these beautiful chord changes and harmonic movement, and no rhythm hardly at all, almost like a free-flowing thing. There's the opposite of that. And so, I find myself doing that. I may play with a harmonic bent, and then that's not very rhythmic or very melodic, so then I will contrast with that and try and play, either rhythmically or melodically to keep it fresh, So, I think that's what's happening there with that bongo player. Just 2 notes, those limitations make you want to go, okay, note and rest information, and then only 2 pitches, and you come up with something, riveting. That's in the rhythmic and 2-note melodic area.
Yeah, and also making me wonder, can I do that? Can I do that on a drum set? I want to do what that guy is doing on bongos. I want to do that on the drum set somehow, and it made me approach drum set a little differently. Your talk of melodic playing was really big to me in the 90s when you went through your bass drum melodies, like your ostinato exercise that just went more and more progressive. I remember seeing one of your performances, and it was something simple like doom 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 doom, and your ability to just freely play melodies with your hands without getting hung up on if is this an E or an or whatever. It made me say, I got to practice this. I have to be able to play every note of the phrase with my right hand, every note with my left hand, every double stop, everything, every permutation of what you can do with your hands while not messing that up. And that was one of your easier ostinatos. It went in odd times and everything, but that was really big for me, was to take myself and really put that type of challenge on the independence of my hands. Like you said, note and rest information, but also sticking wise. Like we learn how to play 16th notes for some reason if you're a righty drummer, like right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And your E's and U's are with your left hand, and your 8th notes are with the right hand. And if you want to improvise, that's kind of a handcuffed way to look at it. You have to start breaking out of that. Playing the E's and U's with this hand, or playing alternating downbeats or upbeats. And I feel like
that's kind of the step two. For
Yeah.
me, first be able to play the ostinato without some part of your body cramping up, right? So that repeated phrase, then the second step is to play the note and the rest information. Then the next step is to play all the mixed sticking patterns, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to help with your melodic thing. And then depending on your kit, you're into moving mixed stickings and note and rest information around the kit to make some sort of a melodic event. So it's like those steps, that get you there. And like you were talking earlier, if you like to do something, if you enjoy this, if you get a sense of self-esteem or self-worth just from learning something new, struggling with it, take the ego, put it on the shelf, and just go, I'm going to suck at this, and I'm going to, keep working at it until it's ready to come out of the closet and share, with other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that. It was just one of those things. I worked a lot of my ostinatos were just an hour a day. I said, I'll just go out and practice for an hour a day, something I don't know how to do, right? Until I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then, you can share it with others and tell them how to do it. And to be honest with you, I got that stuff together really as I was still doing kind of a free time solo that I'd done with whatever, go back in history, Zappa, UK. And then I started to develop this as a second part of my drum clinic, thing. So do your free time solo and then talk and then do your little ostinato thing and then explain how you do that, And I thought, well, okay, talking to all these kids, when I was sponsored by different companies, and they'll have it together next year, and so I better keep developing more compositions along those lines in order to stay ahead of the curve, you know. And then I found myself out in the jungle with nobody following me really, and I just made a meal out of it, and realistically, that's like part of, a top line melody against some kind of chords or, harmonic or rhythmic accompaniment, So we have organists who can do, two voices in each hand with Bach and then a bass line with their feet. And I thought, drummers have four limbs. We can do things similar to this. And it's amazing how simple it is when you think of it on a organist level, And I just thought, well, this is like cripplingly, simplistic, but it's also incredibly effective because it's just not expected from the drums, So
there are a few prevalent versions of that are even more basic. Like if you think about the Ringo Starr solo at the end of Abbey Road, where it's just that he's doing that.
Yeah,
but
that's
that's just
ostinato.
eighth notes. And then and if you think about people who solo on top of a samba, but those are maybe because they're a little simpler, people do those.
Yeah.
Anything
and jazz independence with the left hand and the right foot or the left foot, while keeping a jazz ride beat.
Yeah.
That's an ostinato. It's been there.
Yeah.
And then there are several examples of great drummers, like Tony Williams did a few ostinatos that were, and then Billy Cobham did one or two, and Airto with the samba is one of the first guys I saw. I think he was with Brazil '66 maybe at the time, and I thought, wow, he's keeping his foot going with that groove, but he's playing whatever the hell he wants on the bell of the cymbal.
Yeah.
And Max Roach, of course, with the drum also waltzes, and there was one he did in 7. So, all these great drummers did one or two of those, and I thought, well, there's a direction,
Dennis Chambers had that double pedal triplet he used to do.
Yeah.
And he used the solo like that. Ephraim has the 3/2, which I love.
Yeah.
I think, I guess another reason why that works so well is, your approach to ostinatos is it allows you to have some type of foundation where your syncopations sound like syncopations.
Yes.
If you're just playing notes without a click track or a cowboy going, coach,
Yeah.
coach, coach, something, you don't really see how hip this is.
Yeah.
The tension and release where you're pulling away from the downbeat and landing back on the downbeat.
Yeah.
But if you have some kind of rhythm going underneath and then you're pulling around on top, then it gets exciting and it tears, it pulls on your body a little bit.
Yeah. And like Tony would do that with vamps, with his, emergency band, The band would be playing whatever, a set of changes, and he would just be going off, And it was not free. It was subdivisions that we're all used to in combinations that were just amazing and beautiful, And he created a lot of that, soloing over a vamp. And, that's kind of where it comes from, too. Yeah. Great stuff, So tell me about your Miami experience and your, going to school down there. And you said you had some great teachers. You had a drum teacher and great college teachers, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, in high school, I grew up in New Jersey. My high school drum teachers were Tommy Igoe and his dad, Sonny Igoe.
Oh, sure.
So I was very fortunate that Tommy used to come to my high school and teach the jazz band and the marching band. So I got to study with him. And then if he were ever on the road or gigging, he would say, go over to my dad's house and take a lesson with him. And then we'd just play big band charts.
Yeah.
It was great. I didn't realize how lucky I was as a 15-year-old to have that type of instruction. And then when I was 18, I moved to Miami to go to their music school. They had a big faculty of really great teachers, and they were very different. You had the conceptual dude, you had the very organized guy, you had the classical guy, you had a world music instructor. So I feel like I would just bounce around between all these different percussive, teachers, and they were all giving me different looks on the same instrument.
Yeah.
You had the old school, business dude who's like, that's not gonna get you a gig.
Yeah.
This is how you work, and you need that too. And
Yeah. I remember the Edward B. Straight, books, always be on time and make sure your equipment is in good order,
Yeah.
There was like a page full of dialogue, and then you're drumming, read the notes, exercise on the right side of the page.
Yeah.
And I remember too, Ed Thigpen, who, beautiful brushes guy and a dear friend, he took lessons from Papa Joe Jones, right?
Yeah.
And so he always said to him, Edmund, always be on time. Matter of fact, get there, an hour to half hour early, and if nobody's there, when that clock hits 3 and, where the session was supposed to start, you do 3 or 4 minutes on the drums. Just, letting people in the other rooms know you were there and you were on time so you never get docked and stuff like this. And it's important,
Yeah, there's a lot of business stuff. It's a whole other episode, but you can talk about all the things that you can learn that, make it look like you're valuable. You're a valuable hire, a valuable person to have in the organization. But yeah, the music school thing, I studied with Steve Rucker. He's still the professor there, and several other teachers there, and I learned a lot. And also what was great about it was the other drummers there. There were so many good drummers that were there that were around my age, that were way better than me, and everyone shared music, African music, avant-garde jazz music, all sorts of things, cool pop music that I wasn't hip to. So I learned so much while I was there. And another good reason to study music in Miami was I tried to gig immediately. I didn't want to just be in a practice room for 4 years. I wanted to be out playing music and seeing music, seeing other great drummers play. Because coming from Jersey, I would go to New York City on Fridays or Saturday nights every weekend and see great players. So I wanted to continue that. I didn't want to be off in some cubicle somewhere for 4 years. So I kept seeing music and gigging and learning and getting those, real world chops of like what works and what doesn't work and what I need to aspire to. And that was my experience there. And everyone should know that Miami is a very Latino city. So being the Korean-Irish, gringo, moving down there was a learning experience too. And I didn't feel like it was at all, there was no, I didn't feel left out. In fact, it was very inclusive. I felt like I'd audition and get into a band, like, oh, hey, you don't know any of this stuff, so check out these albums, you
Yeah,
know, so
yeah.
you get up to speed. I'm like, oh, thank you, you know, and where's beat one, by the way? You know, show me, can you tap your foot so I know where we are? Like that, and then I learned, and I think it could have been the other way around. It could have been, they could have said, get out of here, kid. But it was quite the opposite. All the people I worked there were very inclusive, and it helped get me miles further than I would have gotten on my own, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember too, you know, my college days were, you know, first of all, learning to read notes on the staff as opposed to just rhythms, you know. I could pretty much sight read rhythms and knew all the rudiments. So, you know, I could play in the band and do stuff like that. But, you know, learning theory, you know, at age, whatever I was, 18 or something, you know, up against a guy who's played clarinet since he was, you know, in second grade, you know, was challenging and made you want to, you know, really dig in. And it seemed to me that when I would talk to other musicians and about theoretical things, you know, and, you know, just whatever it was, it kind of let them know that I knew, you know, I was listening to them on another level, you know, and being able to converse with them and therefore play music with them, coming from a knowledge, you know, standpoint that's closer to, you know, their mastery, you know, as opposed to just the drum guy, you know. And, you know, that would work for me, you know. They would understand that I understood, and then there was more respect. And, you know, if I would talk to them about something and go, you know, I recognize a chord, right? So at the end of this section is this chord, you know, and say whatever it was, they would go, yeah, you know, so then you know the next one is one, and we start the structure over, you know, or something like that. And it might have been something as simple as like a, you know, Jimi Hendrix type of chord, you know, and that I would go, okay, now that's
dominant sharp nine.
Yeah, sharp nine.
Yeah.
And yeah, with the major underneath.
Yeah,
so the things like that were pretty cool. And it just helped me to get along better with them. And then, you know, you have a better chance of being hired and thought of as somebody, you know, they might want to use. And so, you know, that works in a professional thing, you know.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is learning song form. Like if you think this song is 32 measures long, that's one way to look at a song. But if you say, oh, it's an A-A-B-A, now you know a little more.
Yeah.
And then if you know, oh, it starts off, you pedal on the 5, and then we come in, you're like, oh, wait, you know what a 5 chord is. Each, when you learn more and more about harmony and song form, you understand the structure, and you're able to compose better. Your own drum parts better.
Yeah.
You're not just playing, I'm playing kick, snare, hi-hat for a while. I do some fill, and then I play ride, hi-hat, kick drum for a while, and you know why you're doing this.
Well, also it frees you up to compose more interesting drum parts, you know, because you can hear that 5, and when it's, you know, it's a way to kind of keep your place in the music without having to count, you know, so you're free to maybe make up an interesting beat and, you know, listen for what's coming up to help you to understand, okay, this is where you change and, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Some tension release also.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to play something that's a little tense because you know it's going to resolve in 4 bars.
Yeah, and I mean, there's endless structures, you know, and in jazz too, you know, jazz changes, it really got kind of complex with the chord changes, and maybe there's like 13 changes or something, you know, and so that extra bar from the 12 that, you know, feels natural, if you don't understand that, or if you do, you're able to deal with it in a better way, a more effective way. So, yeah, all that stuff. I had great teachers too, you know, and if I didn't understand something, you know, I'd say, what is this thing with the major tetrachord, you know, and, well, Terry, you know, the major tetrachord is a whole step, you know, a whole step, half step, whatever it is, and, you know, they would explain it to me in these technical terms. Whereas jazz guys, you know, would say, "Oh man, I play colors and textures, and you know, I don't listen to drummers, man. I listen to the saxophone player."
Yeah.
And I'm going to myself, well, I'm hearing ding, ding, a ding, ding, a ding, and that's about it, you know. So why don't you be honest with me?
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm never going to do that to kids, you know, who are standing outside the club because they can't get in because they're not old enough, and listening and trying to learn something, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's again, it goes to show you that some people are just slightly better at teaching than other people.
Yeah.
If you can't not only explain what you're doing, but help other people progress,
Yeah.
then you're not a great teacher. It's not, you don't necessarily have to be able to explain exactly what you're doing note for note, but if you can help someone else get from point A to point B, you're teaching them.
Yeah, and using the terminology that we've known for, 400 years or so.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the goals I had too, was to use clear traditional language to describe what it is I'm doing. And, once again, from just being bored on a plane and reading different musical terms out of
Yeah.
a musical dictionary.
And then you also, by reading those musical terms, you find out that you haven't made this stuff up.
No.
It's been around.
Yeah, it's
this
been around.
amazing concept that you think you invented. You're like, oh, actually, they've been doing that for 600 years.
Yeah,
I just didn't know the word for it.
Yeah, I'm doing nothing new here, right? This is, talking about the basic 5 elements of music, which is rhythm, then melody, then harmony, dynamics, and orchestration.
Yeah.
These things have been around now for quite a while. And why can't we apply all of those aspects to the drum set, even in a very simplistic way? And whether you're playing with a band or playing solo, you can use these concepts. I would say, look at a heavy metal guitarist, playing a shred solo, right? And I'm just riding 8th notes and playing fast double bass or something. Well, I can imply harmonic changes by moving, every couple of bars or so to a different cymbal behind this guy, So I'm, keeping myself entertained because I've heard him shred, so many times. I can imply this different depth to, his accompaniment.
Yeah.
And, so it just doesn't matter if you're, it's not, because I play solo all the time, doesn't mean you can't use these things with an ensemble.
Yeah, there's also something that you've employed over the years that's noticeably kind of your thing, which is also a lot of pitched accents, pitched stacked chinas or the spokes or anything. Like I hear, there's a Robbie Robertson song you played on. There's some Missing Persons stuff. I don't think where I hear go, go, go. You hear these are drum melodies going on in the background, counter melodies.
Yeah,
which
and I have 8 specific pitches of open chinas, double chinas, and bell chimes, what have you. So I can play, melodies on all of those textures of instruments. And things like that.
And not even in a solo context, in a backbeat, you hear go, go.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, cool. That actually had a melody to it,
Yeah,
those
exactly.
accents.
Kind of like, white noise on a mini Moog or something, So,
Super
well, I
hip.
think we have pretty much covered
Episode
what
1.
we need to cover. Yeah, it's an endless ongoing thing. We didn't even talk about Ephraim, but, Ephraim Toro has just opened my mind so much to amazing concepts. He's truly a genius and way ahead of the curve.
I owe a lot of what I do now to a lesson I took from him several years ago, because he just gave me this mountain of concepts to just work on at my leisure, and it's just been unfolding and unfolding and unfolding, and it's been great.
Yeah, I love him. Well, I think we are out of time for the discussion part. Thanks so much for joining us here on Drum Channel. Thank you, Brendan.
Awesome, anytime.
All right.